Well, welcome to, I'm sure it's been a great weekend so far. I know it's been a very long day for most of you. Ben over there has been whining all day. Oh, it's been 5 a.m. start for me today. 5 a.m. It's a nightmare, but I'm glad you all turned out here. Hope dinner was good. I did this same panel about a year ago. In fact, this weekend, a year ago. So I thought before I introduce the panelists, I'll look back on what the soccer world was talking about a year ago, this weekend. Of course, it was before the World Cup, so I look back and all the bookies were discussing the World Cup this weekend last year. Brazil, big favourites. They would roll to the World Cup. Luis, I'm sorry, I apologise. You know, Germany, meh, bit young. Brazil, very wrong there. A year ago this weekend, Toronto FC beat Columbus 2-0. 2-0 to start the season. Jermaine Defoe, 3 goals in 2 games. That was a bloody big deal. The playoffs were going to be no problem whatsoever, right? Didn't happen that way. In the Premier League, Chelsea beat Arsenal 6-0. They're in first place, cruising to the championship. No, Man City won that. El Clasico, Barcelona, this weekend a year ago beat Real Madrid 4-3. Leo Messi scored a hat-trick. Atletico Madrid won the championship last year, of course. So my point is our game changes so quickly. But thankfully, thanks to people like these guys beside me, we're in really good hands. The future's in really good hands. There will be 5 panelists once dinner is served downstairs. So Joe Fletcher and Caroline Chanel will join us as soon as they've had the dessert. Referees, right? But let me introduce our panelists and we'll get this thing started here. I'll start with Vanessa Martinez Lagunas, former Mexico international. She has a UEFA Pro license and is currently coaching in Manitoba, University of Manitoba. So please, let me hear it for Vanessa Martinez Lagunas. Our next panelist, you probably know her, former England national team women's coach, Great Britain Olympic women's coach. The first woman to ever get her UEFA Pro license is Hope Powell. And beside me, the man I offended already. I apologize, Luis. I do. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You're Brazil. I mean, sorry, no sympathy whatsoever. Luis Fernandez Paes de Barros. He works at a little club called Santos in Brazil. You may have heard of it. He's a futsal guru and also a strength and conditioning coach. So please, Luis Fernando Paes de Barros. So this is a conference on development. So let's start with soccer development. As you know, the last year or so here in Ontario, a big initiative, no scores, no standings for under 13s. It was received warmly, I suppose, in most quarters. People fear change, we know that. There were some that were outspoken against it. But my question is, I'm going to start maybe with you, Hope. I know in UK, I believe it's under 10s, no scores, no standings. How was it accepted over there?
What the actual no scores?
Yeah.
I think, can everybody hear me? Yeah, is that okay? Yeah. I think everybody generally understands that you know, it is about developing players and let's not have the scores and the results. Sorry. You're welcome, but that doesn't work. So.
Okay. So I think in England everybody kind of understands the no scores, no rankings, no and that. But I think there is also an argument for it about winners and losers. I think somebody has to win, somebody has to lose. My personal opinion is I think we should celebrate winners. I don't think we do it enough. I understand it is about taking part, which is, you know, a bit controversial in England. I think taking part is great, but also winning is equally great and should be celebrated. So there's two schools of thought. You know, should we celebrate winners and applaud them, or should we just say, you know, it's about taking part? And I'm very much into applauding winners.
Vanessa, your thoughts on this very obviously controversial subject, obviously coming from Mexican football, but now coaching in Canada. What are your thoughts on that?
So again, I repeat that the kids need to have fun, but I agree with Hope that it's important also that we teach them both to win and to accept to lose as well, to learn how to lose, but more importantly, to find ways to create or establish a seed in those kids to find out ways to learn from their defeats so that that doesn't happen again. So I think if you don't keep scores, still each game, I haven't met a kid or a person that goes to the field to lose. Nobody does that. Even the younger kids, they want to win, you know? And I think we coaches, parents, we need to teach our kids to compete, always do their best, but very importantly to enjoy the game.
Luis, at Santos, obviously a rich history there. I mean, how many legendary players have come through the system at Santos? What is the philosophy there with the younger age groups?
They start playing when they're 6, 7 years old. And when they are 11 years old, they come for football, so they start playing balls. Like it's all about winning. Yeah, the philosophy. They need to have fun. They need to enjoy the game, but they need to understand that they're going to play for a professional team. So they build this winning mentality and this fighting for the best player. So it's a different philosophy in Brazil.
Is there though too much pressure put on the younger age groups, do you think? You know, obviously over here, under 13s, I believe there's no scores, no standings. What age group can the kids start to handle the pressure, do you think?
I'll tell you about my experience in Brazil, okay? Imagine we are a poor country, and one of the unique ways for the family to grow up in the social parameters is to become a soccer player. So imagine the pressure that we put on that kid and that player since they are very young. Okay? So what I can tell is probably 60% of the kids, they stop before they are 15, 6 years old because they cannot handle the pressure. Right? So few kids will be there, will become professional. So because of that pressure, we lose many good players along the way.
Is that the same motive? Yes, okay.
I just would like to add something. Again, we discussed this during the conference. The fact that many kids before grew up playing street football. And even in that environment, although there were not coaches or parents involved, only the kids, you want to win. You want to win and you do all your best to win. And if you lose, at least this is my experience, that's how I grew up playing the game and how I learned to play the game. Playing small-sided games in a local park, usually with many boys, if you lose, you have to wait a lot of time to get playing time again on that field. So you never want to lose and you do everything you can to stay on that field because you have only one for many, many kids. And I think that was a huge incentive for us to do everything we could to win. And of course we were learning from our peers, from the other kids, what do they do to win and to be able to stay there. So I think even in that environment, winning is important.
But what about the late bloomer, the kid that, you know, perhaps is smaller than her or his you know, friends out there, feels intimidated, doesn't like the pressure, but maybe, you know, won't really show her or his skill set until he's much older. Shouldn't he be given the chance to play in a less competitive environment?
It's for me, it's a strange one. I think any child, in my opinion, I could be wrong, any child that goes into something competitive, they want to win. And I think it's really important that someone's got their hand up, so yes.
Isn't it the issue more that you were in the parks and the streets without the parents, and the pressure and the negative feedback from the parents?
Are you saying that the pressure comes from parents?
That it's, by removing the scores and standings, it's a method to try and control the 15, the worst part of the game is the 15 minutes ride home. To try and
can I tell you what I did?
Yeah.
When I was the coach of England and I worked with all the age groups, I was responsible for all the age groups. So under 15s, under 17s, the parents weren't allowed to be there. We'd send the parents home. Right, come back and, let me finish, come back and pick your kid up. So that pressure from the parents we've removed. I think what we have to remember is that in a team sport, certainly, or even an individual sport, I think children naturally want to win. And winning isn't easy. I think you learn life skills because life is about winning and losing. Somebody will lose. Not everybody will make the head coach. Not everybody will be the chief executive of a company. Somebody will always be second best. And I think it's for me personally, I think it's important that children understand winning and losing. And I don't think, certainly in England, the philosophy is, there seems to be something wrong with celebrating success. In England, we are very happy to celebrate second best. And that's probably why England doesn't win anything. Why are we celebrating second best? Why are we celebrating England getting knocked out of the World Cup in the group stages? For me, who is of West Indian parentage and had to struggle and fight, we want to celebrate success. I don't think there's anything wrong with celebrating success. We're happy to celebrate second best. I don't see why we can't celebrate first best and encourage people to win. It doesn't discount people coming second or third or participation. We're not saying that. But we have this real issue in going, well done, you're a winner. I think that's wrong. Why can't we celebrate it?
I think it's more in response to the people that can't be reasonable and that come down on the kids with, way to go, you're a loser. Now what am I supposed to do with you? And how do we safeguard those kids whose parents are not being reasonable and what we want to not encourage, right?
We'll continue this conversation. Let's welcome our other panelists to the table, though. They've finished their dinner. Please come along. Joe Fletcher, international referee, of course, World Cups, Olympics, great at handshakes too, if you remember. Just YouTube Joe Fletcher, it's amazing. It's superb. And Carol Ann Shadard, another international referee with World Cup experience. Welcome to the panel. We've hit rather a hot button topic here, I think, regarding the competitive level in youth soccer in particular, and how in recent months, we here in Ontario and around the world in various leagues and countries, federations, associations have gone to don't keep score, don't keep standings. And I mentioned this hot button topic. Carol, Anne, can we start with you? What have you heard? I know you're a referee, but what have you heard here in Canada about this this initiative? Is it being accepted?
I can probably talk about it without the microphone, but I've heard about the initiative. I come from a sport background. I was a national team short track speed skater before I became a referee. So I come from the background of sport, and I competed at pretty much every level except for the Olympics as an athlete, World Cups and everything. So for me, I understand long-term athlete development though as well, and the need to make sure that athletes are developing appropriately. But I do echo some of what Hope said, that we can celebrate winners, and there is an effective way to encourage young people who aren't going to maybe want to be a FIFA referee or a national team soccer player or something. There are avenues for them, and there are ways to encourage them to continue to develop in the sport that they choose to do, or in any capacity that they choose to do, whether it be a referee, whether it be a coach. People consider refereeing kind of like the alternate, just because I can't play, I became a referee. maybe for soccer that might have been right. I wasn't the greatest soccer player in the world, but I was quite a decent athlete, and I still chose to referee. So I see both sides, but I really do believe it's about encouraging the athlete or the referee or the coach or the volunteer to find the path that they need to do to be able to achieve whatever their goals is, be it top level referee, be it I just want to be able to referee locally and help my local soccer club out. There's tons of opportunities.
Joe, your thoughts on this controversial subject as a referee?
To be honest with you about the scorekeeping and such, I'm indifferent on the topic because I don't want it to get past the ultimate goal where, in the case of players, we want to teach them how to play the game. In the case of officials, we want to teach you how to get better. And on the one side, I understand it's a little bit more difficult if you're not going to keep score to say that when this is competitive, this is the pressure you're under. Because a lot of this is being able to cope with pressure, make decisions under pressure. For as referees, that's a lot of what we do. In real life, I'm an accountant. If I make a mistake, I hear about it. It's very similar to my refereeing gig. When I get things right, people expect that. So I don't think there's anything wrong with having to deal with pressure and be under pressure when you make decisions. So if that atmosphere can be preserved still while keeping score or not keeping score, again, that part I'm a little indifferent on, but I think there's good life lessons to realizing that we need to learn to cope with these things in our everyday lives.
I'll just talk about one experience that we had in Brazil in our university. We took two teams and allowed the kids to play, and we just watch the parents and their behavior. When the game is done, we ask them to change the positions. So we ask the parents to go inside and let the kids do the same that they do. So then the parents learn. So, I do that, I talk like this. Yeah. So the pressure comes much more from the parents than the coach. So we need to worry about the environment. Okay? Not the game, the problem is not the game itself. And the game mimics the life, so they need to learn.
And I don't think the point of removing scores and standings is to prevent competition at all. It's to safeguard the kids. We removed scores and standings from our house league 10 years ago because I was coaching under 7, and I looked down the bench. I was the convener at the time, and I looked down the bench and I realized that I wanted to use me, fairly maternal person, wanted to use these children, 6.5, 7 years old, to beat that guy down there on the other bench. And I went back to my board and said, we have to change this, because if I'm willing to go there, you can't tell me all the men in this room are not willing to go there.
Well, I would like to add something in there. I think you're right. It's not about removing the competition element of the games, because as I said, every human being loves to compete and try to win. But again, I do agree that we need to protect the kids, and especially we need to remember something, that only or less than 1% of all players become elite, and 99% don't. So we don't have to forget that, and still, the point is when you keep scores, and coaches, of course, also are under pressure to win, they don't give opportunities to all the players. And at that age, you need to let the players play. You know, you need to make sure everybody, every kid gets playing time. Because if you already start removing kids and don't giving them minutes to play, how are they going to become better? So I think it's not about going in one extreme or the other, but it's to find the right balance, and also to make sure they have fun, they learn to compete, they need to learn to win and to lose, but of course we also need to protect them, and also we need to let the coaches understand that at that age is about developing the players, teaching them all these life lessons, but in the right way.
Actually, Vanessa, let me ask you this. You know, we compare the technical ability of soccer players over here in North America to Central America, South America, Mexico, you know, obviously parts of Europe. And the old adage is, well, it's because in Brazil, for example, the kids grew up playing on the street. every spare second they've got a ball at their feet, they're playing, you know, on the street corner, in the park, wherever it's going to be. Whereas here it's more structured from a young age. Having experienced football, soccer back home in Mexico and now in Canada, is that true, do you think, from a technical skill standpoint?
I think so, and I would like to share that because I think in my program, the biggest struggle I have is to change the culture and to teach my players to take out responsibility of spending time with the ball. You know, today in in my classroom session, I show the participants a video from Marta showing her amazing technical skills, and I asked them a question. I said, do you think a coach taught Marta to do all those amazing things? And I think it was unanimous that they said, no, she learned that on her own, you know, spending time with the ball and learning street football. So I encourage, of course, we know that now it's really dangerous. Also, the environment is not as many years ago, but I think that if we are creative and we create a safe environment, but we try to replicate some elements of a street football, we might help our kids to learn and also teach them to take out responsibility. They need to be self-motivated to improve, because you as coach, you can help them, but if they don't want to improve, you cannot do anything about it.
Caroline, as a referee, you know, who's refereed the games featuring, you know, players from around the world, do you notice a definite difference in that skill set at a young age?
I think so. Excuse me. I think players come from different backgrounds. They play different styles. You see that very clearly. The style of play in a European country isn't the same as a South American country. There's a different flair, and that starts very young. It shows itself at the highest level, but it starts very young. You know, it's the same. Referees are used to seeing, if you only see one style of refereeing or one style of play, you're used to that style of play, and it's very different. You know, if you've never seen a South American style of game and you've always refereed European teams, it's a very different style. It's a different management style. It's about, you know, as referees, we're only as good as the players that we referee, because we need to see the top level soccer, whether it be women's football or men's football. We need to be exposed to that, and it's about exposing, from a refereeing standpoint, exposing ourselves to different styles, which is easy to do in Canada because we have teams from all over that play those different styles, but it's not so easy in some countries that are very focused on similar styles of play. But you can see it's ingrained in them from a young age. Even when you look at the fans, the young fans that are out there cheering for, you know, during the Olympics or during the World Cup, just the difference in their passion to the game, you can see it right away. So it's really evident on the soccer field.
Joe, is there an easier style to officiate? Is one style, one part a little more cynical, say, than another part?
I would argue that it's more difficult to assimilate to the style that you aren't around. So if you took a European referee and then asked him, okay, you're now going to referee Argentina and Chile, he's going to find that difficult because they're going to challenge his authority more than he's probably used to. Now you're going to take a South American referee and give him to European nations, and where he's going to be looking for confrontation, he could almost cause a problem because they just want to put the ball down and get on with life. So it definitely is different, and then when you see the clash of cultures, trying to understand that difference, and that's why I'll agree with Caroline. In Canada, because we are such a multicultural society, we end up with mini World Cups at every level growing up. So you'll deal with a Scottish club, you'll deal with an English club, you'll deal with a Mexican club, you'll deal with them playing each other. And even though there's only 100 people watching the game, you get that experience to deal with it. So that when you go to a World Cup, you have a better chance of its success.
And you're very heavily involved in futsal. It's still in its infancy here in Canada. Can you explain to us how important you think futsal is to the development of good young footballers?
The first point is the size of the field. The area is much smaller, so you touch the ball much more times than you touch in a regular football game. We have some research that show that if you have full-size field, 11v11, 11 years old, 10 years old, some games the kids they touch the ball at 5 minutes. So if you take a 20 minutes game, half time, so they will touch the ball 4 times, 2 times. In futsal they touch the ball every 20 seconds. So every 20 seconds they make a technical element of the game, so they have a decision making all the time, the player and the pressure all the time. And also the way you have to protect the ball, the way you need to learn how to handle the ball, it's different because you're under pressure all the time. So it makes a skillful players with a better decision maker. That's what we are looking for in the players all the time. And if you see the history now, all the big countries, football countries and big clubs, they are working with small side games. So they're trying to bring the game closer to futsal. The Dutch Federation in the 80s, they went to Brazil to study the Brazilian way, and they built a book. Their philosophy is 4 against 4. So that's futsal.
So basically, sorry, go ahead. Yes.
Long-term player development, from what I understand, has been going on longer over in Europe than it has in Canada. It's been going on for many years. So now, has it come full circle over in the UK and Europe where long-term player development has been ongoing, that they can say, yeah, you know what, yes, no scores, no standing, has had a good impact at the top level, or has, because that to me is, if you're looking at the whole picture, and you suddenly are starting to look at where has it helped? Has it helped your game at the top level?
In England? What was the question? Sorry.
Long-term development, no scores, no standing.
I think it's quite new in England as well, actually.
Very new.
Yeah, very new.
That concept, has it gone long enough that now you can see the results of that? Do they like it at the top level or not? Has it impacted
In England?
positively?
In England, it's been
Quite controversial. It's only come in sort of the last, I think, 2 years where they've gone, you know, no standing, no results. We want the kids to play with fun and no pressure. It's been quite controversial because some people want to celebrate winning, and I am a firm believer that there's nothing wrong with celebrating success, and I don't think we do it enough. Certainly in England, I think it's gone through to the schools. It's not about winning, it's about the taking part. So there's been a lot of challenges there. Someone's really, you want to say something clearly.
Oh, can you please define success for us, please?
Well, it depends what success looks like to you. So I'm saying that when somebody, if you've got a tournament, a youth tournament, and you put the scores up and there's a clear winner, first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sometimes, you know, it's about showing those scores, and that's, nobody wants to say that that team came first. That would be a success in some people's eyes. But success, yeah, you measure it differently. That's just an example of what success could look like. And in England at the moment, they're going through this thing about, do we need to show the scores? Do we need to say who's won and who's lost? Is it about just participation? And I'm saying you need to celebrate success. There's nothing wrong with it. So, in my opinion, of whatever you deem success looks like. So, for me, I'm an international coach. So, yeah, it's different. So I'm saying from my point of view, success would be winning football matches. Winning is success, you know, based on whatever my criteria was. So if I'm in a major tournament, the next game, winning that next game is considered success. It's not about how we perform because it's results driven. So what I'm saying, in England now, they're looking at no scores, and it's a very, very new concept. But it's been quite controversial because some people want to say, we want to publish scores and we want to have trophies and we want to have results. And I understand we want children to participate and have fun and enjoyment, but there will always be winners and there will always be losers. Fact.
Because if we're striving the whole big picture,
Can't hear you, sorry.
I tell you what we'll do is we'll keep moving along here. At the end of the panel, we'll open the floor, and you could hammer our guests with whatever questions about not scoring, not competing, competition. Okay, sorry. Well, I'll be closed by then, so. Yeah, we'll please. be patient, we'll get to these questions. But let's move along, shall we, to a far less controversial topic, refereeing. My question is, why would anyone be a referee? And I jest because I respect it so much. But I watch so much football every single week, mainly international, in fairness. But I watch what you guys are put under, the pressures you're put under, and it's extremely, extremely difficult. Has it ever been harder, Joe, to be a referee than it is nowadays?
I say, as of right now, it's probably never been harder. But then in a month, 2 months, and a year, it probably will be. Because the reality is, we have the ability for more people to watch the game and see the game from more angles. So television and greater exposure, more cameras at matches, has not necessarily helped our cause. Because unfortunately, everybody is quite happy to see us make a mistake and say that is the reason why we lost today. That missed throw-in that Joe Fletcher missed from St. Catharines, Ontario, is the reason that we are no longer in this tournament. Please tweet him and blog about it and talk about it, discuss it, because it became accepted culture. So thankfully, which all of the people in the audience may not be aware of, we have each other. And by we, I mean the refereeing family, because in a sense, to go through this alone would be extremely difficult. But to go through this and know that you've got mentors and friends and family and stuff, it makes you wake up and say, you know what, it isn't so bad. But I think the increased TV exposure and cameras at matches is what makes it harder.
Are you a fan, Caroline, of video replay? And
How did I get that? What I will say is a referee, doesn't matter what level, but especially at our level, doesn't want to make a big mistake, right? We will make mistakes in a game just like every player will make mistakes. There's no doubt. Every single game we do, we will make a mistake. What we hope is that that mistake doesn't influence the outcome of the game, right? We want 100% correct decisions in game critical situations. That's what we're striving for in our game. So anything that can help the referee make a game critical decision, our goals are always going to be the same. That this goal is referees 10 years from now, it's going to be the same thing. We do not want to be the people you talk about after the game. We don't, for us, you know, success is not nobody talking about us after the game, right? Success for a referee is walking off the field. We know that we did well, and we want you guys to talk about the game, right? We want you to talk about the players, about the awesome shots, about the fact that we didn't have to get involved. I mean, if I don't have to get involved in a game, it's a great game, right? I've done World Cup semifinals where I've called 10 fouls. That's a great game. That's a lot of football for people to watch, a lot of top quality football. So anything that helps the referee make a great decision, I think helps. But I think we also, the reason we all love football is because it's a human game. It's fun, the atmosphere, everything. It's awesome. So I think we have to preserve kind of both, right? Make us look great and keep the flow of the game.
Well, let's ask coaches here. Should we humanize referees more? Do you talk to your players, Vanessa, before a match and say, listen, you know, they've got a tough job. Be kind. Or do you say, listen, gamesmanship, get under their skin. Try and, you know, get a call your way. What's your philosophy towards your players when discussing the referee before a game or at halftime?
Well, I have to be very honest, and I just admire the referees a lot. I know that it's a really, really tough job to do, and I really try to teach my players to respect them. And we all know we are all humans, and everybody from us makes mistakes, and we need to respect that. So I just tell them, if they make one mistake and we're able to score more, right? So let's say it was a critical situation, and of course we know we are all humans and that affects the result. If we're a better team, a good team, we will be able to score another goal and that will fix it. So I tell them, respect what the decision is, you cannot change it, respect the referee and continue playing.
Is that different to when you were a player? How you feel?
I think I have always been like that because I know that I cannot affect it. I can get mad, I can do whatever I want, but I cannot change the decision. So I was, at an early age, I was taught by my parents and also my friends, especially my parents. They taught me, forget about it, continue playing, concentrate on the next play. And that's what I try to teach my players as well.
You've obviously coached some huge matches in your career. What's your feelings? Is referee abuse an issue?
I would question who'd want to be a referee. No, seriously, I think they have the toughest job. And honestly, I have the ultimate respect for referees. I was a player and a coach. And I think sometimes we forget that they're human. And somehow we think that as a coach, I miss so much in coaching. You know, I put on a session or I'm working with my team and I miss so much. But yet we think that referees should see absolutely everything. I'm a great believer in, I really think there should be TV assistants like they have in rugby. Really, I think sometimes the judgment calls on referees are unfair and unjustified. I think they do a tremendous job, and I'm not just saying that. I think in England we've had this whole respect campaign for referees, and I just think sometimes we need to respect and applaud the job they do, because the game over the years got, and I'm not just saying that to score brownie points because they drive me mad a lot of the time, but I think the game has got quicker and quicker and quicker. In a blink of an eye, the situation can change. And I sometimes think, you know, if we expect referees to see absolutely everything, it's crazy. So I think they're harshly judged and wrongly judged sometimes. And I think most of them do a fantastic job and should be applauded for that.
In South America, you see some great videos of some referees in South America, and they transcend the sport. You know, they're huge personalities. Often it's about them. It seems. Is refereeing seen differently in South America than perhaps would be in other parts of the world?
I think so, because our culture in Brazil is try to go against the law and try to do something different.
I think it's called cheating.
It's a South American philosophy. That's the way we grow up. So if the referee is not strong enough, you cannot control the game. It's difficult. And also, we have always two guilds in the game. If you lose the game, for the parents, the guilds are the referees or the coaches. So we have to share this problem. As you said, in South America maybe they're stronger or they try to control more than the European games.
Is a fourth official useful, Joe? I sometimes wonder how much communication is between the fourth official and the referee on the field, because yeah, okay. Caroline?
Yes, because the coaches yell at the fourth official and not at the referee. No, no, that's not true. No, absolutely. All four members of the team are extremely important. You know, like Hope says, we can't see everything. We need help. We can't be also dealing with everything off of the field. There's a lot of things that happen around a soccer field. The first time I was a fourth official, I was like, holy crap, who just scored that goal? There's so much stuff that's happening that they are useful. It can help calm the benches, you know, at different levels. I mean, typically, you know, at international matches, they're a little bit better behaved than they are maybe at professional and lower level matches as a general rule. But yeah, we need 8 sets of eyes at least, or 8 eyes, 2 to 4 sets, yeah.
Joe, let me ask you, you see the abuse of officials more and more now, in the big leagues certainly, and I'm sure you see it, you know, at the grassroots too, unfortunately, but what is the most intimidating situation you've been in as a referee? Has there been a time when you thought, okay, this time they've crossed the line?
Amazingly, the most intimidated I've ever been is grassroots level. And it's my first year, and some guy who I'm convinced to this day was drinking. I can't prove it, but And he's lashing out at me, and I'm a 14-year-old kid, and I'm like, bottom lip starts quivering and everything. And I'm very thankful that a very good gentleman by the name of George Grant was able to step up for me and say, you get off of him, and whatever. And I'm standing in the middle of the field with this huge smile all of a sudden, like, yeah, get that guy. And literally, to me, problem solved. International games, I don't care what they say, you can cheer, I'm busy. Like, I got so much to concentrate on, I don't really have time for, I'm blind, I'm deaf, I want to be a ref. Like, do whatever you got to do, I don't care. Like, to me, we need to protect referees at grassroots level, and then you assimilate and you learn to deal with it, because we teach that there's a difference between the passionate response and dissent, because they are two different things. When I can handle, when I cannot.
I completely agree. It's much more intimidating to walk out onto a local soccer field with 50 parents who are emotionally invested in their kids, and that you can hear every single word that that parent says. It becomes much more personal. When we're in a stadium with 70,000 people, yeah, the boos are loud. We hear them. But it's not personally directed at me. Whereas if I'm a young 14, 15, 16-year-old kid, and there's a parent speaking specifically about me, and I can hear that coach or that parent, it's much more personal. And it takes a ton of courage for that young kid to walk back out on that soccer field. I mean, for me, I have people walking with me. I have my team. I have a support system. I'm an adult. I'm an adult dealing with other adults. When you're a 15-year-old kid and you're getting yelled at by an adult, and they're abusing you, and you would never speak to anybody like that, it's really tough. And so for them to get back out there day after day, you want to know why we lose referees? It's that specific reason. It is really tough. Even me, I hate refereeing local soccer because I have to hear the parents who have no idea who I am and what a FIFA badge means. And I still hear things, and I'm thinking, I feel like I need to prove myself, and I don't think I should have to prove myself, but you do every game. And I mean, I'm not 15 years old anymore, so it's tough for them, really tough.
I know where you're going with this before you even say it. And trust me, in my local park, where my young sons play, I have two sons at 8 and 5, I've warned anybody who dares say anything to a referee, they'll deal with me the second they try it. Oddly enough, and happily enough, nobody has said a word. But how many of me are at every park field?
To separate, we're talking about two different things, So if we're talking about recreational level, we all need to agree, we need to respect the referee's decision, because if they make a mistake, it's not a big deal, It is not affecting something really big. But if they make a mistake in the World Cup final, for example, or in the Champions League in Europe, where there is a lot of money involved in that, then they need help to try to prevent those mistakes. But I think it's about education. Of course, we need to educate the parents, but it's more important to teach every kid, and we coaches, that's our role. We need to play that role, and we need to teach them, just as I told you, and it's so simple as that. If you're a coach that respects the referees, and you tell your players, whatever the referee says, you keep playing. Concentrate in the next play. We cannot change it, right? Whatever decision they take, they have taken it, you have no influence on that. So forget about it, keep playing. That's what I do, and I can tell you that has given us some good results, because we don't fight it. We just respect and we keep playing.
I don't think professional footballers should be role models by any stretch. At the same time, should they be more accountable, Hope, do you think, on the field? You talk about how certain players or parents might react a certain way, show their emotion, their passion in a negative way. You watch a professional in the Premier League, in the Serie A, La Liga, week in and week out, they're not doing themselves proud. I'll talk about Chelsea, for example, 2 weeks ago, with their abuse of the official. Do professionals have an accountability, do you think, in this regard?
Yeah, I think they do. I think, there's been this whole debate, well, certainly in England a couple of years ago, about professional footballers being role models. And some would really question if they are role models for the right reasons. So I think they should be accountable for their actions. I'll tell you a little story. When I first started my coaching career, I was coaching at Crystal Palace, and a young boy started, as the session was going on, he must have, I can't remember, I think he got tackled by another young boy, and suddenly he gave this other boy a karate kick on the field. And I kind of split it up, you know, what are you doing? You can't do that. And you know what he said to me? I saw Eric Cantona do it. And I was absolute, what could I say? So I think, you know, if we look at professional players as the so-called role models, and I question whether they're role models, absolutely they are accountable. And I think, you know, sometimes they need to recognise the influences they have on young boys and young girls. So accountable, yes. And I'm now going to just contradict a bit of what Vanessa said. I think absolutely we need to preserve it. As coaches, certainly of women's football, we need to preserve that purity, if you like. It's interesting, I was in Cyprus last week and at a tournament, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I saw female players being tackled and rolling around. You know, when you've seen it in the World Cup, when a player gets tackled and they roll 10 times. And you know the ones that roll 10 times are the ones that are going to get up. And you know the ones that don't move after a tackle are seriously injured. So I actually think that what's happening in the men's game in terms of players being tackled and feigning injury is actually creeping into the women's game. And I think it's really important as coaches, coaching in the women's game, that we try and encourage our players, to be honest and fair. Because rolling around and all that simulation and all that nonsense absolutely kills the game. I know when I watch the Premier League and I see grown men rolling around after being tapped on the ankle, just absolutely kills the game. And we really don't want that creeping into the women's game. And sadly, what I'm seeing a little bit, certainly last week, I was absolutely appalled. You know, rolling, roll, and I'm like, oh my God. You know, when people are rolling around, they're clearly not injured. So it is slightly creeping, and I think we need to just try and preserve the purity of the women's game.
But I do believe that coaches can play a big role there. And if we are the role models and we teach our players not to do that, it's not going to happen. But we need to prevent it, and we need to keep the purity of our game.
But isn't it partly... Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, from the point of view of the referees, you know how hard it is to tell if there's actually contact. Do you think that post-game video review is the best way to deal with that? Is imposing some form of discipline post-match?
MLS do that, for example.
And I mean, yeah, there's been a couple cases here, but it's not nearly as prevalent as I think.
I'm not going to speak to any post-game review. I mean, the referees are responsible for what happens on the field. They do the very best they can. Believe me, simulation is very difficult. Embellishment is difficult as well, because that usually means that there's been some sort of contact. Anything that my point of view and the way I look at it, I do my job on the field. I fill out whatever reports I need to fill out, and I leave the rest. I don't know who gets suspended because of 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 yellow cards, and I just worry about my job on the field. So do I think the women's game historically has been the type of soccer that I like to watch and I like to referee? Absolutely. I think the 2011 Women's World Cup was a showcase of women's soccer that people who didn't watch, people I know that never watched a full women's soccer game in their whole life, sat down and watched, you know, these games because they were so great. And so I'm disappointed to hear what Hope's saying, but you know, we know it's coming in, and we do our job to try and prevent it. And I hope that the coaches and the players coming up that it doesn't creep in, because I think, you know, what we have in our game is very special compared to the men's game.
But is embellishment partly cultural as well? I mean, Luis, you mentioned earlier that, for want of a better word, cheating is accepted more so, right? In South America, for example, you know, if you can con the referee, that's gamesmanship. Good for you. What's your thoughts on the whole diving embellishment, which we frown upon here in North America? we used to frown upon more so in England, but it seems less now, more and more. What is your thoughts on that?
That's like they said. We coaches, we should start working on that since they are very young. Like my peers, if they do that, I took them from the field. They cannot do that, and I always tell them, if the referee make a mistake, if we are a very good team, they can make 1,000 mistakes, we're going to win anyway. So don't complain, don't talk with the referee. We should do our job. And if I see one of my players cheating or pretending they are doing something or they are get injured, I took them and say, you cannot do that. Just stop. But I'm one 3,000 of course that just want to win the game.
Well, in FIFA do say it seems for every World Cup we're going to crack down on diving, and they never crack down on diving. So it's actually, let me ask you, Joe, before a World Cup, what does FIFA generally come to you about? Is diving a big topic in recent tournaments?
So this World Cup, simulation was something that was discussed beforehand, but I'll put it out to everybody in this fashion, and I'll use the example of the player who does 10 rolls. Take a player who has genuinely been tripped. You can watch it, you can watch the replay of it. This player has been tripped. It is a foul. Now this player continues to do 10 rolls. And it upsets everybody because does he need to do 10 rolls after he's been tripped? Is it A, any less a foul? Or B, is the general public ready to see a yellow card issue to the player who you just gave a free kick to? It's going to confuse a lot of people. Free kick this way. Oh, by the way, the guy got tripped, get up, here's a yellow. There's something to be said for this is embellishment, which Caroline is dead right. Simulation, no contact, a replay will show that. It's easy for us to go and say yellow card, if we can see it. Player who's taking a slight contact, exaggerates that contact, it is very difficult for us to go and give that yellow card. Why? Because the 32 cameras around the stadium are going to show in very slow motion that a player has been touched. Oh look, there was contact, that's why he fell. Referee got it wrong. That's what's going to happen. That's that? I would challenge you, sir, that I would say that in any match, when you're looking at the letter of the law and its application, the other thing we always will have to consider is what is general playing culture. For example, if I give seven times in one match, I were to call a goalkeeper for holding the ball in their possession for longer than 6 seconds, what would you say? 7 seconds, 7 times in one match. I would challenge you that most of the general public would want to castrate whoever that official is. There is that hope, and that's typically in a lot of the leagues, that's what they set out directives. Like MLS has a directive this year about dissent. Same thing, in the hopes that it will diminish that. Some things are easier dealt with than others, but my point about embellishment is that typically what happens is we see it once live, we decide, that's it. Everybody else gets to watch it 20 times and then try to make a determination whether we're right or we're wrong. So typically the direction we've been given on these kind of things is when you can see it and it's clear, deal with it. If it's not clear, and this is part of the beauty and the passion of the game you spoke of, you're going to have half the people say, yes, that should be a yellow for embellishment, and the people cheering for the other team are going to say, no, that wasn't, he got nudged, it should be a penalty. And that's part of the beauty of our game. It's the gray zone, unfortunately, but it's what we get to deal with all the time.
Just we're seeing Joe about the heat of the moment lot of players that when they lose the ball, instead of running back to come get it, they'll watch themselves open. Do you guys take that chance to look at that screen, or that's
Hell no. Well, typically at an international match, they're showing replays, but not of controversial decisions. So yes, there may be the odd occasion because there is a human in the booth cutting because they're showing the video feed from TV, but there is actually somebody in the booth who, when there is a decision that could be controversial, that is supposed to not show it. It has happened that there have been controversial things that have come on the video, but as the referee, I'm making the decision in real time, the best that I can, and I'm learning every day how to be in the best position to make that decision. The game's changing, it's getting faster, I'm trying to be in the best position. I learn after the game, I made the incorrect decision, I hopefully learn from that, and I take it into my next game, but I definitely don't look at the big screen.
What do you make of all these ex-referees now who are getting media gigs and they're critiquing the performances for the weekend? Yeah, exactly.
In a few years.
It's a good thing. It's educating the masses in the rules of the game, I suppose, but also it's, as a referee, it must be very difficult to know that on Monday morning, Graham Poll could be, smashing me in mainstream media because of what I may have missed. Or... No, you're right. So the media is the enemy here.
Well, all I'm saying
they are,
is,
I'm just saying.
Yeah, the coaches get it week in, week out, don't they? They get critiques on, certainly in England, Football Focus every week. So I guess it's just an unfortunate natural progression. My question is, who'd be a bloody referee?
Who'd be a coach?
I think it's a little bit more personal when it's another referee, and I'm sure it's the same if it's a colleague referee saying something about me. It's somebody maybe I trusted at some point and worked with at some point. It can be a little bit more personal, but as a referee, honestly, I try not to watch the news after a big game, just in case. And my sister usually lets me know if I should not read the blogs or something like that. Don't read the blogs. Change your name for today, please. But it is more personal when it's somebody that you've trusted, I think, but we have to also be able to take constructive criticism. That's the only way we're going to get better. So we need to look at it from a player standpoint as well, and the coach's standpoint. And it's passionate, and there's a difference between passion and abuse and dissent for sure. And we don't want to take passion out of the game because that's what makes it so wonderful.
We have some tweets here sent in over the last couple of days. This one's from @JenJunks. It's for Joe and Carol Ann. Have you ever thought you've been part of a game that was match fixed?
No.
No. But what I did find super interesting is, FIFA's really invested a lot of money in the education and training for match fixing, which the referees get at pretty much every tournament that we go to. And, they showed some statistics from some of the World Cup matches in 2011 World Cup matches. We don't think we're, as big as the Men's World Cup but the statistics were shocking about the amount of betting that happens on football. And so that, I think, the education is really important. But no, I've never, as far as I know, been involved. And if I was,
Every official who was selected for the World Cup was subjected to a 2-hour presentation from what I'm going to call FIFA Interpol. But essentially, they went and they explained to us exactly how betting rings work, how an approaches would sound like. They gave examples of what it would look like. We have, separate from anything we report to FIFA, there's a separate hotline, essentially, that says, this is where we're to contact if we're approached. And it has nothing to do with the referees committees or anything like that, so you are totally, it's supposed to be anonymous, safe, and it's very much encouraged. In fact, even when they feel that there's no reason to it, if a referee makes a mistake in a game, there might be questions from this separate department, because they have nothing to do with refereeing, who are just saying, betting patterns seemed weird around this decision, so now we have to ask. And that's the reality we live in this generation.
Moving on here, obviously it's a celebration of soccer and women's soccer this summer in Canada with the World Cup coming here. Lots of tweets about this. Now I want to ask Hope specifically about this Canada's women's team has been much celebrated for a number of years, a very competitive team, compared to the men especially. However, women's soccer has been quite a small world. You know, it's growing more and more now. What are your thoughts on the Canadian program and where they might finish at this year's World Cup? A few tweets asking this. Not a loaded question at all, I promise. Okay, it's loaded.
Yeah, I've been...
Have the mic.
Yeah, I've been asked this question a few times. I think the standard of the game across the board is dramatically increased. I think Canada are in quite a tough group, aren't they? So China, their opening game. They've also got, remind me, because we were discussing New Zealand, who obviously John used to coach. The Netherlands are a very progressive team. Certainly when I was England coach, our matches were always very, very tough. I think it's going to be tough. I think it's going to be tough for Canada. Do I think they'll get out of the group? Yes, the chances of getting out of the group now are better because it's a 24-team tournament. Are they going to get to the final? I think it's going to be very, very challenging and very, very difficult for them. And I think with being at home has its advantages and disadvantages. I think the crowd and the support could help them, but it could equally be a massive, massive pressure. And I think the expectations after winning bronze in the Olympics, everybody expects a little bit more, even though they lost to England and they were very, very lucky on that day. That went straight over everybody's head. Yeah, I think generally it's going to be very, very challenging. I think if you were to seriously ask me who was going to win the World Cup, I think it's quite open. I don't think it's predictable as it has been in recent years.
The world's getting...
Yeah, smaller.
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 Luis, obviously in Brazil, previous women's team for a few years there. Marta, absolute legend. Average. Who was the greatest women's player of all time? Very quickly. All right, Marta. Where does women's soccer rate in Brazil at the moment? Obviously, men's game, we know what that is. You know, it's a religion. Where is the women's game?
To be very honest with you, confederation and the teams, as local federation, they don't care about the women's soccer. When I came back to Brazil after 6 years abroad, my first job was a professional female team, and the project lasted just 1 year. We have tremendous players, very good talented players, but there's no money. The federation really don't support them. So you see the girls, they are in semi-final of the World Cups and the Olympic Games, but they don't have any support. Now they got a professional coach, a male coach for the female team, and the female team is like they are working like a team. So they have been together for 2 months preparing for the World Cup. But if you go to the national team, you have 4 or 5 teams playing the national team. Just that.
Vanessa obviously coaching in Manitoba, the next wave of Canadian, hopefully World Cup players coming through. Your program, you would hope. What is the quality at the moment at the college level, in university level in Canada, and where might it go? I mean, as Pope says, the world's getting smaller in some regards. It's going to be much harder for Canada to be competitive in future years with the investment overseas. Where do you see it right now?
Well, I can tell you that the level here in Canada is not bad. Before I came to Canada, I was living for several years in Germany. And when I came here, I was really surprised about the level of our league. It's pretty competitive. And I can tell you that if Canada invests in continue improving this league, it will help a lot to develop more players for the national team. The best example is the USA. Many of the players that have made it to the full national team there have gone through the NCAA. More than 95% of their players go through that league. And if Canada invests in our league, I can tell you that the universities can support the national team program a lot, because the universities have amazing facilities We have the opportunity to train our players every day if we want. There are no restrictions like in the US. In Canada, we can train our players every day of the year if we want. We have some of the most qualified coaches in Canada. Most of the university coaches have really high licenses, have master's degrees, plus they teach. So they are also educators. And I think in many countries, including Canada, the help or what universities can offer to football has been overseen and underestimated for many, many years. And I think it's time, especially that Canada is having the World Cups here. Last year, the Under-20 World Cup, and this year, the Senior Women's World Cup. There has to be a legacy. And that legacy for Canada needs to be to develop our players here in the country. From my experience, after living many years in Germany, also several years in the US, some of the most developed countries in women's football, they have invested. And that's why they are getting the results now. If Canada don't invest at this point, then it's going to be hard. Because you cannot depend on another country to develop your players and then expect to be good at the highest level. Just think about the numbers. How many players can you send to the US, to the college league there, to make it to the national team? Not many, you will count them. But how many can you develop here in your country if you start investing now? So I think the key is to develop players in Canada and develop the infrastructure for the future. Because if you don't do it now, many countries, smaller countries, are doing it, and Canada will fall behind. I'm afraid of it.
Very well made points. Hope if you compare that to overseas in Europe, where it's less of a school system, it's more of a club-based system, very professional from day one. Do you understand the system over here?
No.
You're not all there?
No, I'm just starting to obviously asking a lot of questions about how the system is, how the clubs work, how the provinces work, how the coach education system works. It is very, very, very different to Europe. And I would say in that respect, in terms of the coach education, the league structure, the provinces, I would say it's behind, actually. And as I think that's fair to say. Maybe not behind, but very different. Very different. So in England, the FA govern the game, but in this country, it seems to be that correct me if I'm wrong, the provinces and the clubs govern the game. Is that right? Sort of? Yeah, more or less. So and each province could be different in terms of governing the game. And I think that could be problematic because nothing's standardised.
It is problematic.
Pardon?
It is problematic.
Okay, it is problematic. And I'm just learning this today. And I think with the number of players, I found out today that it's the #1 participation sport. For a country of this size and the numbers, I would suggest that really the football, both male and female, probably should be doing better than they're doing. For a country like England that is relatively small, I know the England men bombed out. I'm not really interested in the England men, but the women that certainly when I was in charge and continue to be quite successful given the size of the country. So it's very different. So understanding how it works, the fact that the coach education, and with all due respect, in England, you couldn't be a technical director in a province without having your A licence. And I think here you can. Is that right? You could be a technical director in a province and not necessarily be a A licence or a pro licence coach. That would never happen in England. And I think, in terms of coaching and education, the better the coach, the better the player. And I think you're missing a trick, really. But it depends who actually governs the game. In England, the governing body govern the game and they can set standards and criteria. And in this country, it's not the same.
So that, for me to get my head around, is a little bit, it's very different.
Wouldn't you agree that the geography of the country is a significant challenge?
Yeah, but each province, if they're, yeah, I understand that, it's a huge country, but if the Canadian Soccer Association, this is the way I assumed it worked wrongly, if they're the governing body of the game, everybody else in the provinces have to abide by their rules and regulations. So if the governing body is saying in your province, in order to be a technical director, you have to have an A license, then if they're the governing body, that's what should happen. Because in England, that's what should be happening. Somebody has to govern the game. But it appears to me that each province is governed differently. So there's no standardisation. So how can you quality control what's being produced? I find it a little bit mind-boggling, and today I'm really just, I've been asking a lot of questions, and it to be honest, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, personally, because there's no one body going, look, we're going to standardise across the board. In order to raise the standards, you're going to have to do this, this, this and this. But at the moment, what happens in, where are we? Toronto, is that right? Ontario could be different to Winnipeg, is that right? Did I say that? Or Manitoba, or...
Well done.
Or whatever, and I just don't get that. British Columbia, or Waterloo, or London, or whatever.
Well, we have a province that hasn't even signed the federal constitution, so they're
Excuse
never
me?
going to buy into the CSA.
Say that again.
We have a province that hasn't signed the federal constitution of our country, so they're not going to buy into the CSA.
And what do you mean by the
We have
federal
a province
constitution?
They didn't sign the constitution in 1982. We're afraid to go back. They've
Right.
never signed the constitution, so they don't consider themselves part of the
Moving on. Let's not get into politics.
Let's concentrate on football. Football. So just really, I think, for me, I really see a lot of opportunities where things probably, I look at it and I think, for a country of this size and the population and the numbers that play, I think you're missing a trick. Really. I think you're missing a huge trick, in my opinion.
Just to show the difference between the countries and the cultures, in Brazil we don't have license. Okay? If you want to work with a football coach or volleyball coach, handball coach, you must have the physical education degree or sports science degree. So if you don't have the degree, you cannot coach. Right? Only the professional coach, they can go directly. But even though, like I have a master degree, I believe that doesn't make you better coach because of that. Okay. So I believe if we can have license like we have in England, we could develop better coaches, not just because of the degrees that they have. Okay, so just to show the difference.
All the qualification strands. Having the piece of paper doesn't make you the best coach in the world. What it does, it sets you on a journey to improve and hone your skills and become better. But if you're, and forgive me for saying this, if you're working with players and you don't have any qualification that gives you the ability to develop players, if you've got no qualification, or you've had no knowledge, or you've had no training, it's like being a teacher, isn't it? I couldn't be a maths teacher without going through a certain level of qualification in order to teach. Football is about teaching, so you have to have some exposure to qualifications and learning to be able to disseminate that information to players, to enable players to become better. And in my opinion, the better the coach, the better the player. And I've really, today I've really kind of tried to understand the education system of coaches. I'm a little bit baffled, to be honest. And I think you're missing a trick, personally.
getting late. Any more questions from the audience here? You were very anxious earlier. Lots of hands up. No? Yep, there we go.
Just a quick one. From your comments around technology and wanting to improve, your thoughts on goal line technology. And a lot of traditionalists oppose it, but in order to move the game forward, is everyone on the panel in favor of it?
Yeah.
Greatly in favor of it. And having used it at the World Cup, I can tell you there were 2 goals that were awarded where the assistant referee inside the closed door room where it's just us said, no way I give that live. Because one of them, the goalkeeper, was between him and the ball. He never could have seen that.
Now it's not just like I said, it's about making the right decision and game critical decisions. So.
I am definitely in favor of it, especially for the World Cups, for the highest level of the game. As we said, that's a big deal, right? And if we can provide some assistance for the referees to make better decisions, definitely, and we should be open to it.
Me, absolutely, 110%. And I think, personally, I think it needs to extend more than just goal line technology. I think as the game's got quicker, faster, I think referees, I think they need help because they will miss things. You know, human nature, you blink and the game changes. So yes, absolutely.
I never go against women. So.
Is there a fear though that it will, upset the flow of the game?
Yeah, I think that for me that is. I think that is the argument, but I think if you look at tennis, they use it quite well. Rugby use it. I think there's volleyball use it. I think there's ways how it can be adapted to suit football and not interfere with the flow. You know, I think the flow's interrupted enough by a simulation and bloody players rolling around and all that malarkey. You must waste 10 minutes in the game doing that. So I think there are ways around it.
But very quickly, this is probably going to be a longer answer, mind you, but you look at the game today and women are obviously playing a far greater role in the game at the highest levels, but still not perhaps where it should be. Is it still a man's world in football? I'm asking all of you, especially the women on the panel.
Definitely, of course, we have gone a long way. Just to remind you a little bit about history, women's football has a big difference. The first official Women's World Cup was organized in 91. The first ever Men's World Cup was organized in 1930. 61 years of difference, and I think the steps that we have made in that period of time is amazing, is to be admired, but definitely there are still many barriers that we women have to face in all roles. Referees, coaches, players. When I started playing in Mexico, first of all, there was not a national team, because in the 70s, there was a boom of women's football, and then the federation stopped it, because they saw that women's football had a lot of potential to grow, and they were afraid that it was going to take away from the men. They stopped it. So for over 20 years, there was nothing for women's football in Mexico. When I was dreaming to play for the national team, we had no national team. But I said I will play for a national team one day. Until the end of the 90s is when the national team was created again, and is when I had the opportunity. But I had to start playing with boys because there were not enough women's teams or girls' teams to play. So I was a 13-year-old playing with boys, and when women's teams were around, I was playing with 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds. So big difference, great challenge. As a coach, when I started my coaching education in the US and in Germany, although they are really developed countries, usually I was the only female in all the coaching licenses. When we were 2 or when we went 3, it was amazing. We were very happy about it. but definitely we have a lot of barriers. Even in the administration, right? In power positions, we are underrepresented. So yes, it is still a male-dominated environment, but I think we also have had amazing men that have given us a chance, that have supported our sport, and that's why we have made those big steps. So I think that my message for the audience is that we both, men and women, need to work together to develop our sport, because only together we're going to make it better.
How long before we see a woman in a locker room as a coach at a professional level?
Sorry?
Any interest? What, being a first female in a professional league as a coach, head coach, manager, how far away?
Well, there is a Clermont in France is the head coach is a company that's at the ACT, who is the first. Carolina Marachi did it some years ago, which people don't remember, in Italy. It's difficult because I think, unfortunately, it is still a men's world. The decision makers in football, both male and female, are ultimately men. I think it has changed. I think there's still a long way to go. I think it's challenging for women in the game right now. The popularity has grown. I think there are more and more men becoming involved in the women's game in terms of head coaches. That means there are fewer opportunities for females to be involved. So somehow we have to, I guess, work with the decision makers to try and create some opportunities for more and more female coaches to be involved in the game. But right now it's a challenging situation. There are a lot of very good female coaches, pro license holders, that are not in the positions in the games that probably they could be and deserve to be in. So I think certainly from where I stand, the biggest challenge is to get more females involved in leading coaching roles in the women's game. So there's still work to be done.
Yeah, what I would like to add is that sometimes our society is really afraid to try it. I think it's still far away until this is going to happen, but my vision for that is that in the future we are judged by our quality and not by our gender. Even if a female is qualified and ready to coach men, it should be also accepted. Because right now, men are able to coach men or women, they can go either way, and why not a female that is qualified and ready to coach men, why she cannot do that? And again, I want to share an experience with you. When I did my UEFA Pro license through the German Federation, we are required to do an internship with a professional men's club. And I was assigned to a second Bundesliga team. At the beginning, I have to be honest, I was afraid, right? I didn't know how the players, the coaches were going to react to that. But I can tell you that it has been one of the most beautiful experiences I have had, because the coaches, the players accepted me very well. You need to show that you know, and then the players respect you, and the coaches respect you. They gave me the opportunity to be on the field, to run sessions with the professional players, second Bundesliga in Germany, players from different countries, and we were able to do it. Even the coaches found really interesting to have the female view on some things, because I see different things, they see different things, and we found the coaching staff working together, men and women, we complement each other, and it was a fantastic experience.
As an example, here in Canada, we have John Bergman that we're very happy with. Let's say we have a female coach rising up through the ranks. She doesn't have the qualifications of John Bergman. But maybe there's a time for a shift to put a female coach in charge of the Canadian national team. Would that be beneficial for the game, for the players, for the country? Would you do that? Would I go with that?
So, would you do
grow
Yeah.
coaches, we want to grow the sport and put female leaders from female.
It's interesting. It's happened the other way round, where you've had a pro-licensed female coach lose a job to a male coach that isn't as qualified. So why not? Would I be happy with it? Yeah.
All right, well, thank you so much for your great questions.